Okay, good evening, and sorry, everyone. First and foremost, we have a guest all the way from Saudi Arabia with us here today. I'm having a too much
Hmm.
echo. Samuel Shropshire, and he hails from America, and he is an international peace activist, converted to Islam. So, and he came to Canada a few years ago, so I found him very interesting, and that's why we want to hear today. Unfortunately, we lost a brother this week, as many of you know, from an attack at the mosque here in Toronto. Brother Muhammad was buried today, and they had a beautiful ceremony, interfaith and religious and Islamic ceremony to remember him. And I wanted to use this opportunity just to remember him. I knew him when I started giving out the hampers at IMO about 6 months ago. And since then, he has only been a source of love, willingness, kind-heartedness. Anyone who calls for a hamper, despite of the timing, he was willing to give it to them. Get the hampers when we bring them. And he was a guard at the mosque. Basically, with COVID-19, you couldn't enter the mosque openly, and he would basically manage the entrance and the flow. Tell people to go to it. And that one night, Saturday night, he was sitting outside of the mosque just after Easter prayer. The brothers were praying inside, and someone came in the dark and stabbed him. And by the time the brothers and the imam heard and came outside, and they called emergency, he was pronounced dead. He leaves behind an mourning, daughter and sons and family and brothers and sisters in Guyana and Canada. So I had asked Pandit Ishwar, but I didn't see him join us. But I will read a poem that I read today, and then I will go straight to Samuel. And maybe Samuel can share some of his thoughts as well before we continue into the program about the passing of our dear brother. Muhammad Aslam Zafis. In his garden he rests. This thing called a life, Neil, so precious, spilled on the sacred grounds and left Muhammad kneeling in his own garden. A beauty and characteristics, he smiled at everyone, even the ones that hurt Zafis, packing hampers, guarding the frontiers alone. In Guyana, he is loved equally. A child said to her mom, "Is that the uncle that gave us sweets that passed?" And these he had last text, "I love you." Cries in her dream, "Chachu, where are you?" How can a daughter live without her papa and mother? A son mourns for a father. How will the friends hear your laughter? And the table of mercy get a tireless udder. Say a life lived without passion, is death before the procession. Muhammad lives to serve humanity. You remember that barbecue and curry? Widow, the orphan, the shelter, the moths, the seniors, the sisters, the unhoused brother, the families he held from his own treasures. Say goodbye. Being a son of Toronto, went down like a fallen hero. Only heaven could say why. We pray that Allah put his choices blessings upon his soul. Today he was interned. Hundreds of people turn out despite of the social distancing and the masking and the COVID protocol. Police, the media, interfaith, Canadians of all walks of life, and the Muslim community were there to join in prayers and well wishes. We pray that Allah gives strength and faith to his family members and his loved ones and find justice swiftly for the one who has attacked our brother innocently and so horrifically. Amin ya Rabbal Alamin. So,
Habib, when did
so
this happen?
Samuel, tell
When did
us,
this happen?
are you hearing me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you, yes.
When did this brother die?
Saturday night in Toronto.
I'm so sorry.
Are you hearing me? Yes.
When did this brother die?
Saturday night in Toronto.
So we're getting a lot of feedback from the Facebook.
Yeah, it's not on Facebook, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
And I shared it on my page.
A lot of feedback from the Facebook.
Yeah, it's not on Facebook, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
And I shared it on my page.
There he is.
So tell us about your childhood and when you grew up in the States. What was it like? And what are some of the stories that helped shape who you are today?
Well, I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. My dad was a pilot, Navy pilot. We lived in North Charleston,
Go.
and he died when I was only 3 months old, so I never knew him.
Oh, you get.
But
Can you hear us?
but
You can hear us.
when I was 3 years old, my mother moved my 2 older brothers and my sister and I to North Georgia, to her hometown, Jefferson, Georgia. And that's where my memory begins. My mother would take me every Sunday to the First Baptist Church of Jefferson. Jefferson was a small town of only 1,800 people. And it was in Jefferson that every Sunday at the First Baptist Church, my mother would take me to the library and let me choose a book that she would take home and read to me. And the one book that she got over and over and over again was called The God of Abraham. So she would sit me in her lap and she would begin to read to me. She called me Sammy. Here today in Saudi Arabia, I'm called Sami. But my mother would say, Sammy, look into my eyes. You have to remember this. And she would tell me this story of Abraham, how he was asked by God to leave his mother and father because they were worshiping idols. And she would say, look into my eyes and remember what I'm about to tell you, because you have to pray to the God of Abraham. There's only one God. Now, I was taught this by my Baptist mother. And I was surprised to know that that's basically what Islam is all about when I arrived in Saudi Arabia. Now, I went to a Christian high school, Christian university, and then I went to 3 Christian graduate schools in the United States, Faith Theological Seminary, Liberty Baptist Seminary, and the California Graduate School of Theology. I was taught in every school that the Bible was not the original texts of the Bible were not reliable. They didn't have them. And that there were some mistakes in the Bible as we had it today. So I was taught that in these schools. These were Christian schools. But I loved the Bible. I read the Bible. I got in trouble. I was smuggling Bibles into Eastern Europe when I was in college. I was arrested in the Soviet Union when I was 21 for smuggling Bibles. So I've always lived an adventurous life. I met my wife in Czechoslovakia, which is a communist country. I met her in a Baptist church there, and that was in 1969. And we corresponded, and I kept going back to Czechoslovakia I would smuggle thousands of Bibles into Czechoslovakia. And then we were married in 1977, January 77, in Poprad, Slovakia. And then my wife came to the United States. She immigrated to the US in September 77. At first, we were living in Tennessee. Then we went to California, where I was working with East West News Service. It was a human rights news service working on behalf of Christians, Jews, and Muslims who were being persecuted because of their faith. I got more and more interested in this. I was later hired by Christian Solidarity International in Zurich, Switzerland, to be their US director. And my wife and I moved to Washington, D.C., where I began to work on Capitol Hill. Got some problems with my computer now. Okay, I'm back. But my responsibilities on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. were to travel with U.S. congressmen, members of the British Parliament, Canadian Parliament, to meet with foreign heads of state on behalf of religious prisoners of conscience. So we had a lot of success in Romania, in different countries all over the world, in the Soviet Union, in Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, also in our authoritarian states in Latin America. I had two members of the British Parliament traveling with me on one occasion to Nepal and China, where we would meet with government officials and give them the names of Christians who were in prison. And we would say, look, you know, if you want to continue having good relations with the United States, especially China, which at that time had most favored nation trade status, which gave them a special benefit to trading with the United States regarding tariffs, we tried to put pressure on them to release the Christian prisoners. And we were 90% successful all the time. After this work, I got involved eventually in a number of other nonprofits, but in politics in Maryland. In Maryland, I was appointed chairman of the Democratic Central Committee for the city of Annapolis, Maryland, was elected to the city council of Annapolis, later ran for mayor of Annapolis, Maryland. Annapolis is the capital of Maryland. And I lost the mayoral election, thank God. You know, man has a direction in his life. Man makes a choice, but God makes a better choice. And I thank God for that. I eventually ended up in Saudi Arabia. After trying to do several other things, you know, I was beyond my retirement years, but I tried working in retail. I tried doing this and that. People would tell me I was too educated to be doing that, that I was overeducated, that they felt I would leave the job after they trained me. Finally, Dr. Safi Kaskas came to me and he said, Sam, we need you in Saudi Arabia. I said, Dr. Safi, what do you want with me in Saudi Arabia? He said, we're working on a new translation of the Quran, and we need a Christian theologian, somebody who's trained in Bible, Christian theology, to come and work with us on this Quran. But I said, I don't know anything about Quran. I don't know anything about Islam. He said, please come. I went, and my responsibility was just to read the Quran and this new translation they were working on. I was to ask questions. They wanted to make sure that it was easily understood. And every morning, they would sit in front of me after I read all night, and I would ask questions. I would tell them, I think this needs to be changed, or maybe it would be better understood if you said it this way. And some of the time I was right and some of the time I was wrong. But in the process, I was learning so much about Islam. It was like I was getting a master's degree in Islam. After about 6 months, we decided that we would put footnotes from the Old and New Testaments of the Bible, the Old Testament being the Jewish Tanakh, and the New Testament, the Gospels. We would put footnotes corresponding with concepts in the Quran to concepts in the Bible. For instance, where Isa and the Virgin Mary, Mariam, were mentioned, I would show text at the bottom of the page where they're mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible. I would also try to explain different words. For instance, there was a word that's mentioned in practically every surah, or every chapter of the Quran. It's right near the beginning. It says, there are these two words, Ar-Rahman Erohim, God, the most merciful, God, the distributor of mercy. And I would show where these words, Ar-Rahman Erohim, are mentioned in the Old Testament, as well as referred to in the New Testament. And then I found so many similarities. I added 3,000 footnotes to the Quran. We wanted Christians to understand the commonalities between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So these footnotes were necessary. They were necessary to help Christians and Jews understand really what was Islam. So it was a great experience. I learned so much. I'm still learning. 10 years ago when I was running for office in Annapolis, Maryland, running to be mayor, if you had told me 10 years ago, no, Sam, you're not going to be mayor of Annapolis, you're going to be a Muslim living in a mosque in Saudi Arabia, and you're going to be working with prisoners at Bremen prison down the road, and you're going to have a son named Jesus. I mean, this is all amazing to me. Only God can write this story. I'm very grateful for what God has done in my life. You asked me about a son named Jesus. I've got a son named Jesus. Yes, it's true. Shortly after I arrived in Saudi Arabia, I met Dr. Mohammed Al-Hajj Hussein. He's an environmentalist here in Saudi Arabia. And one evening, he invited me to his home for dinner. He lives in the Al Safa district of Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I went to meet Dr. Sadiq at his home with his wife, and he had 5 sons. He has a total of 6 sons, I found out, but 5 of them were sitting at the table. I said, where are the daughters? He said, I don't have any daughters, only sons. I said, MashaAllah, Dr. Muhammad. MashaAllah, it means it's a matter. This is incredible. MashaAllah, Dr. Muhammad. 6 sons. I said, I only have 1 child. I have a daughter. Her name is Jenna. But I don't have any sons. I love Jenna very much. She's a great daughter, but I've always wanted a son too. I said, give me one of yours. I was joking. And Dr. Muhammad said, take Jesus. One of his sons is named Isa. That's Arabic for Jesus. He said, take Jesus. So I said, okay, I'm going to adopt Jesus. Not legally, but as Jesus is one of the best friends I've ever had. He's an incredible young man. He travels with me everywhere I go. He was born in England. He went through high school in Florida, and he travels with me. He speaks fluent Arabic, fluent English. We're looking for a wife for Jesus, by the way. He's very eager to get married. And we pray that that will come true as soon as possible.
We would like to give Jesus a Canadian.
Okay. He's been to Canada 4 times with me already. And so we have to mention that to the ladies. We'll hope to be back in Canada within the next 6 to 8 months. But who knows? But if you told me 10 years ago, Sam, you're not going to be mayor of Annapolis, Maryland. You're going to be living in Saudi Arabia. You're going to be a Muslim. You're going to be living in a mosque. I live at Taqwa, a mosque at Taqwa, or Taqwa Mosque. And you're going to have a son named Jesus. I mean,
okay, Sam, since you said that you live in a mosque, today the brother that we lost, he actually lived in a mosque. And people have been asking me, what is it like to live in a mosque? Of course, I'm sure they're living quarters, but what is it like to live in a mosque?
Well, it's a blessing. When I hear the call to prayer, the caller to prayer, his name is Shafiq. He lives right up above me with his wife and 3 children. The 3 children, they call me Grandpa. The mom and his 2 sons live on the other side of me. And it's like a family. It's, it says, there's a verse in the Bible that says, God takes the lonely and he puts them in families. I'm very grateful that he brought me here because I'm very close. My wife and daughter, by the way, are living in Slovakia. I go there every 6 months to be with them, but they're in Slovakia. My daughter has an illness. She requires medical care. And we didn't have health insurance for her in the United States. So my wife and daughter went there when I came to Saudi Arabia. But we talk every day on the phone. We're on WhatsApp together. I miss them very much. I've been not able to visit them now for about 12 months because of COVID-19. I was supposed to be there in March. So hopefully as soon as this pandemic is finished, I'm on my way to Slovakia. But, God is doing incredible things.
Well,
Jesus,
that's an incredible, the fact that you were able to meet your wife in Czechoslovakia, and today that's Slovakia. What was your experience like during the communist years out there in Eastern Europe?
Well, I always wanted to know what other people thought and how other people behaved. I went to very fundamentalist Christian schools that were extremely anti-communist. Communism was atheistic. Communism was anti-God. I wanted to know why the communists believed what they believed. So I didn't want to read it in a book. I did read a lot of books, but I took off to Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Poland. I would travel around, sometimes hitchhiking, but carrying Bibles in suitcases, smuggling them in on trains. The Bible was illegal in Czechoslovakia. It was very difficult to find Bibles at the time, but we would take them in. And we would distribute them even to the Soviet soldiers that were occupying Czechoslovakia in 1968. It was very interesting. As I mentioned earlier, when I was 21, that would have been in 1971. September 71, I was arrested in the Ukraine, in the Soviet Union, for smuggling Bibles. I was on a train. Taken off the train, interrogated for a number of hours, or for days, 3 days. Where did I get the Bibles? Who was I going to see? Et cetera, et cetera. And but God gave me a special strength during that time. Eventually, I was thrown out of the Soviet Union, sent back into Czechoslovakia. When I arrived back in Czechoslovakia, the border guard said, you had a 3-week visa to the Soviet Union. You only stayed a few days. He said, why is that? I didn't want to tell him I'd been arrested. I just said, well, these few days, that was enough. I saw the Soviet Union. But I kept going back even into the Soviet Union. I went back to deliver cash to prisoners. I found another way to get in. eventually continuing to work with Christian Solidarity International. I went to the meeting. It was in Madrid, Spain, the European Security Conference meeting where human rights was being discussed. There I met the son of the president of the Soviet Union, or the prime minister, and I gave him information. I said,
He had other things on his mind. Things below the surface.
Please mute yourselves, everyone. We just lost Samuel. Oh boy, he's calling from Saudi Arabia. Maybe poor connection. We lost him. Julian, could you come on in the meantime and give me your reflection? What are you thinking about a story that you're hearing from Samuel?
Wow, I actually sent him a message in the chat to see if I could get a copy of the document he was talking about with all the footnotes that he put in. I'd be very interested to read it.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was also thinking maybe, I have a friend who has quite a few beautiful daughters. Maybe that could be somebody that could marry Jesus. I could play matchmaker, maybe.
Julian, you'll be the first Christian minister to get someone to marry Jesus. I'll actually do the wedding too.
Yeah. I hope he comes back.
Yeah.
His story is
kind
amazing.
of a story. What do you think about when he said he's actually smuggled the Bibles into Russia and Czechoslovakia?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot of Christian missionaries actually have to do that, because there's a lot of countries where they're not able to bring texts in. So, I'm always shocked whenever I hear that, but also not shocked.
Right. Mm-hmm. You've seen.
I would assume it might be the same for the Quran in some places. Maybe, I don't know. Is that not something that Muslims do? Is there places where you have to?
I don't know. Okay, Pandit had to leave. Pandit had joined us and he had to leave. Rajmini, could you come on your phone and share your thoughts about today's funeral? Oh, Samuel is back. I just saw him, like he's getting problems. No, Samuel, are you back?
There he is.
I'm back.
Okay,
our internet went off here.
All right, lovely. We'll call you later. This guy Imtiaz is blocking me somehow. I don't know why. Come on back, Samuel.
Can you hear me?
I hear you, but I can't see you. I don't know why.
I see you.
Mm-hmm.
Imtiaz is showing up all the time. Imtiaz, come off. Why is that? Okay, keep talking, Samuel. Tell us.
Okay, well,
Julianne was just mentioning she's a pastor. She's interested in your book.
Yeah. This was in year 1980.
Yes.
I was in Madrid for the European Security Conference. I was there to address the issue of human rights abuse in the Soviet Union. And I met with the son of Andropov, who was at that time the leader of the Soviet Union. I gave them a list of Christian prisoners that had been arrested in Moscow and St. Petersburg the day before. They were very upset. They questioned my material. They said, today they would have said it's fake news. This is not real. It was real. I had this information from one of our correspondents working with East West News Service in underground in the Soviet Union. I left the European Security Conference in Madrid and flew to Portugal, where I was to hold a press conference on the issue of Mozambican refugees, a former Portuguese colony, having problems leaving Africa, immigrating into Portugal. But we didn't hold that press conference because the president of Portugal died in a plane crash the day before. So I was there alone. None of the other people who were coming for the press conference showed up. I was there, staying at the Penta Hotel near the airport. And the next morning, somebody put something in my breakfast, in the coffee or in the oatmeal that I ate. And I started hallucinating. I went to the desk. I said, something's wrong with me. I need to leave. I want to get to Berlin to be with my friends. That was my next stop. I'm checking out of the hotel. I went upstairs. I tried to pack it. I didn't know whether I was awake or it was like a nightmare, but I finally got everything together, went downstairs. I said, I need to get in the car. I need a ride to the airport. Please get me a taxi. But there was no taxi. I went outside and it was a black car, no markings. I didn't care. He said he was going to the airport. I got in the car. They put my luggage in the back. And the next thing I knew, I was lying flat on the back floorboard of the car. And I lifted up to look outside the window. And I was in downtown Lisbon. This was quite a distance from the airport. And then I passed out again. And the next thing I knew, the driver was reaching over the seat, shaking me, saying, wake up, we're at the airport. And I sort of crawled out of the car. Somebody set my luggage by me and the car sped off. I walked inside the airport. It was 3 hours after I had left the hotel. And I'm wondering what happened to me. What's going on? You hear about Alexei Navalny, who's in Berlin right now. He was poisoned. He's a political leader in opposition to Putin. I wasn't poisoned, but I was given some sort of drug that made me susceptible to being interrogated, keep me calm, answering questions. I got on a flight to Berlin. They didn't have a direct flight. They put me on a flight with a change in Frankfurt. On the flight to Frankfurt, on that leg of the trip, I started remembering things. I remembered somebody going through my passport. I remembered people questioning me. What was this in my passport? It said it was in Czechoslovakia. Who were my contacts in Czechoslovakia? What was I doing in Poland? Who had I met with in Romania? Had I ever been to the Soviet Union? Fortunately, this passport had no marks from the Soviet Union because it was a new passport from the time that I'd been arrested. So it was quite, I got on when I arrived in Frankfurt, the police surrounded me. They took me to a special holding room. They put me on the next flight onto Berlin. When I arrived in Berlin, I was met there by American military, and they took me to the American hospital in Berlin, where I stayed there for several days. It was my birthday, December 13th, 1980. I was there on my birthday. It was a very interesting experience. I finally began to come out of this. About a week later, I was dismissed from the hospital. The American embassy consulate there told me they had visited me several times in the hospital. They said, this is something similar to what other human rights activists have gone through. It's nothing new. Even some officials from the US and other Western countries had been drugged and interrogated. But I got on another flight. I went to stay with a Lutheran pastor friend in Stockholm for a few days until I recovered more. And then I got on a flight back to Los Angeles, where my wife, she was 3 months pregnant with our daughter. And so it's been a very interesting life. But I never thought I would end up in Saudi Arabia. This is another part of my life that's been absolutely.
So on one side of the spectrum, you're talking about the dictatorship or the despotic countries during the communist rule and how desperate they could be to take down human rights activists. And on the other spectrum, fast forward into the 21st century, COVID-19, 2020, and you're living in a country that doesn't have a very good track record of human rights either. So how do you manage the ability to maintain your integrity and your values and your pursuit of justice after being a Muslim?
Okay, you're asking me a tough question.
On
your
YouTube.
When I came here to Saudi Arabia, I was scared to death. The only thing I knew about Saudi Arabia was what I heard on the news. You know, all of the people who were involved in bringing down the World Trade Centers were Saudis. I was told that Saudi Arabia was hustling with terrorists. They were everywhere. And it would be very dangerous. I was from Annapolis, Maryland. My friends at the U.S. Naval Academy told me, they came to me and they would say, you shouldn't go, you're putting yourself in harm's way. And I was nervous. But Dr. Safi assured me everything would be okay. Just come and help him with this project. And eventually I got on a flight and I came here. Every other door was closed to me at the time. Only Saudi Arabia was open to me. When I arrived here, I was scared. I was afraid to walk on the streets. After I stayed, Dr. Safi had made an apartment for me in his office building. And he suggested, I had a kitchen, I had everything I needed was there. But after a few days, I began to run out of food. And I said, Dr. Safi, I need to go to a supermarket. Where can I find food? And he took me to the window of his office and he pointed down the street and he said, that's a supermarket. And I said, but how am I going to get there? I said, is your driver available? He said, no, he's got the day off. I said, well, I go on the street, somebody's going to kidnap me or somebody's going to attack me. And he laughed and he said, you're going to starve to death if you don't get out. So I began to walk around the neighborhood. People saw me. I looked different. I was a different color than they were. My hair was different. Everything was different. I was one of few Americans. There were no other Americans walking around the streets here. There were other Americans here, but they stayed at the Sheraton Hotel down on the beach, and they don't leave the hotel. They were scared to death too. But I would get out and start walking around, and Saudis would come up to me, and they would say, "Where are you from?" I'd say, "I'm from North America." They say, "Where in North America? Are you from Canada or are you from the United States?" And I would nervously say, I'm from the United States. And they would hug me. And they would say, "Welcome to Saudi Arabia." I was shocked. That wasn't what I was expecting. I would go down to the supermarket People were always saying, "Where are you from?" And they would even stop me in the supermarket. They wanted to make a selfie with me with their phones. The people here are the most friendly people. I left the United States once a year ever since I was 18 years old, but I've never been in any country in the world that has been as friendly to me as an American. This was before I converted to Islam. I've never been in any country that was as kind and friendly to me as the Saudi people. I thank God for bringing me here. I live only 45 minutes from Mecca. 6 months after working on the Quran project with Dr. Safi, I had to read the Quran, read the Quran. I read it many times within 6 months. And every time I read it, I would read new things. I was reading about Jesus and Mary. I was reading about the virgin birth. There was even a book called Imran. That's the family of Mary. And another very large book called Maryam, named after the Virgin Mary. And I was reading that Mary was the most highly exalted woman, that God had loved her and made her of greater importance than all other women of the earth. Well, this is what I was taught as a Christian. I was shocked. I didn't know all of this. I only had heard before coming here that Muslims hated Americans, Muslims were terrorists, it was a very dangerous place to be. I would get announcements over email from this American embassy in Riyadh. You register with the embassy when you come here for important announcements. And they would say, "Don't go to this part of Saudi Arabia." And when I was in Riyadh, I got with my friends there and I said, "I would like to go to this part of Saudi Arabia. I want to see what the people are like. I want to know why they don't like Americans." And I went there by car. It's about an hour northeast of Riyadh, small town, maybe only 1,000 people. I found a little mini market and I went in, I got out of the car. My driver would say, "Don't, be careful, be careful." And I got out of the car and I went inside and same thing, people crowding around me, wanting a photo with me. Where are you from? I said, "I'm from the United States." Wow, and that's when they wanted photos with me. No problem. If we show love and respect for people, generally, people show love and respect for you. There is no part of Saudi Arabia, and I've traveled all over the country now, where I'm not safe. I'm safe everywhere here. It's different. Rules are different. But let me tell you, Saudi Arabia has changed a lot in the last year and a half.
Tell us about that, with the adaptation of Western culture, or along those lines. We hear in the news of so many different entertainment and other things now available in Saudi Arabia. And I don't want us to get it too much into that tangent, but since you're talking about it, I want you to talk to us about your Muslim voice for peace and reconciliation.
Okay. Let me say that Saudi Arabia has changed a lot. There was no talking to women when I got here. I was warned, don't speak to women. All of that has changed. Now it's okay to say hello, to even sit with ladies or next to ladies in a restaurant, to have a conversation, to find out what their life is like. It's we have movie theaters now. You can go to a movie with your friends. There were no movie theaters until about a year ago. there were a lot of things that were strange to me. But let me say this. Everywhere I go in the world, I meet Muslim youth. I was recently in Norway. I meet Muslim youth. I see them walking on the streets in Western countries. They're on drugs, alcohol. A very important part of our work at Muslim Voice for Peace is to educate Christians and Jews and other peoples of other faiths about what is Islam, to try to build relationships. But another part of our work now is reaching Muslim youth who've jumped off the straight path and who've gone to drugs and alcohol in England, Germany, Norway. I was in Germany just a few months ago, and I saw a bar, and I walked in the bar with a friend. I just wanted to see. And there were men sitting at the bar. This was an Islamic part of Frankfurt. And I walked in the bar and I said, Muhammad. And 3 men from the bar turned around and waved to me. They thought I was calling them. You see, and here in Saudi Arabia, I work with Jesus. He's my interpreter at Bremen prison. We work with young people there in the prison. About 800 Saudi youth there on drugs and alcohol charges.
And that's very significant work, Dr. Samuel. I appreciate that. I myself have been a chaplain. I know how important that work is.
So at Bremen, I asked these kids, these are Saudi citizens, why are you doing drugs and alcohol? And they said, we saw it in an American movie. We want to be like Americans. And I say, you know, not everything is good about America. I love my country. I love the United States, but not everything is good about the United States. And you need to choose. You know, we read in the Quran that Shaitan is our sworn enemy. He swore to Allah, to God, that he would take us into the flames of hell with him. He knows he's sentenced to hell, that one day he's going to be cast into the fires of hell. And he told Allah, someday I will take your men and women with me. So I tell these young people, you know, you have a sworn enemy. He wants to murder you. He wants to kill you. He wants to take you into the flames of hell. So wake up. When God says don't do something, it's not a negative. It may sound negative, but it's not. It's God saying to you, I love you. I want to protect you. When he says don't do it, that means he doesn't want us to be suffering from AIDS, or he doesn't want us to be dying of different other venereal diseases. He wants us to live a safe life. He wants to protect us. He wants to love us and keep us on the straight path. But Shaitan is there to pull us off the straight path. How many times, even as a Christian, I tried to live a dedicated life, but, you know, there were times when I got pulled into drugs and alcohol. So I thank God that I'm in a country. You don't find bars here. You don't find it's not easy. But if you're a young person and you're out looking for it, you'll find it. And many young people here, even in Saudi Arabia, dealing with drugs and alcohol. But we need to help these kids. So we have 2 forms of dawah. One is to people who don't know anything about Islam, who have no faith. And the second is to Muslims who've fallen off the straight path, to get them back on the straight path. And I'm beginning to think that my greatest importance to God is to Muslim youth, to bring them back to the straight path.
So I saw on your Facebook you talked about the bill that was passed in America to plant trees. And I love the fact that you have kept abreast with the American politics. Planting trees, as we know, is a sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad, whom be peace. He says, if the day of judgment is about to be announced and you have a tree in your hand, just plant it. Can you give us some of these values you found after accepting Islam? Some values that you found after accepting Islam that were part of your life before?
Sure. It's very important that we get Muslim youth and young adults moving into areas of activism, environmentalism. The more I study the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the more I understand he was an environmentalist, he was an animal rights activist, he was a human rights activist, he was an interfaith activist, he brought Jews and Christians together. If you study the Medina Declaration, which he dictated when he became the leader of Medina, there were Christians and Jewish populations there. He dictated the Medina Declaration, and in that declaration, it guarantees religious freedom for Jews, for Christians, for Muslims, and even for non-believers, for atheists. I went recently to Cuba. Jesus and I were speaking in Havana, Cuba, and we've been there 4 times already. We have a group of men working with on staff with Muslim Voice for Peace in Havana. They're working on the streets, sharing about Islam, but we decided to do something significant in Havana. We decided to hold an interfaith dinner at a very beautiful restaurant. The World Muslim World League was helping us with this. So we invited the president of Cuba. He wasn't able to come, but he sent 6 communist leaders. They had their table. These were high up leaders in Cuba. A Jewish rabbi came with about 15 members of his congregation. A Russian Orthodox priest was there with members, Orthodox Christians. Catholic priest came with about 10 of his parishioners. Evangelical Christians were there. And I'm supposed to speak. And I thought I had a speech prepared. It was in my pocket. I had an outline. I didn't know exactly what to say. We had our own Spanish interpreter there, but he wasn't the best. So we took the Jewish lady, who was absolutely fluent in English and Spanish. She stood beside me as I spoke. I discarded my speech and I said, as I look at you tonight, communists, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, I know, now I know how the Prophet felt when he entered Medina. He was looking at you and he felt compassion and love for you. And he dictated the Medina Declaration, which is one of the oldest human rights documents that exist in the world today. And I explained to them the Medina Declaration. And I spoke of the love the Prophet had for Jews and Christians and Muslims, as well as atheists. And my Jewish interpreter, the lady who was standing by me, she said, just a minute. Somebody handed her some tissue and she was crying. She began to wipe her eyes. See, when people understand who the Prophet Muhammad was, peace be upon him, when they understand who he was and what he stood for, then they understand Islam. I speak, Jesus goes with me to speak in churches. We're maybe 60
I want to say muchas gracias for that story. I actually visited the mosque.
Por favor.
And since we have visited a mosque in Havana, I met the doctor who continues to feed the children and the converts and the people throughout Ramadan, after Ramadan. So we've been blessed to be part of his repertoire. But this story is
Excellent.
incredible. Like, how do you get around all over the world? You have mentioned so many countries you've been before Islam, after Islam, and you're still planning to expand your travels after COVID. How do you get around? And you said you're 72, and the wife and daughter, the daughter is now well, and they're both in Slovakia. How do you how do you do it?
It's you know, it's not, life has never been easy. And I need to provide better support for my wife and daughter. The organization Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, we have our nonprofit status in the United States. It's an officially registered nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. I'll be returning to Washington eventually. Hopefully this year we want to establish a Washington base and office near the White House. We want to be able to lobby Congress on behalf of Muslim prisoners of conscience around the world. We want to be able to provide a true witness for Islam on Capitol Hill in Washington. We also want to be able to work with the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa, and also with European Parliament in Brussels. We have office space offered for us in Brussels, in London, England, at East London Mosque. Free office space. We need money to be able to pay staff to sit in those offices and to work with Muslim Voice for Peace. I need to be able to pay Jesus. Now, all of us are working as volunteers. And my wife is getting a little upset. She said, that's all you've done all your life. You're a volunteer. But God has always provided for us in one way or another. But I need stability. I would like to end my life, I'm 72 years old now, with some stability for my family. And stability especially for Jesus so he can get married. So pray for that. If there's anyone out there who can help us financially, they can go to our website. It's www.mvpr.org. That's www.m like Mary, V Victor, P Paul, R Roger.org. And when the website opens up, you'll see at the top, donate. You can click on that little button and then you get directions as to how to support the organization. We are a legal 501c3 certified US registered nonprofit or agency, but we're ready to be funded and expand. We're also approved by the Saudi Ministry of Religious Affairs here in Saudi Arabia. And we're trying to, we have some 30 coordinators, volunteers again, in 30 countries around the world who are coordinating MVPR activities, working in peacemaking and reconciliation, providing education about Islam to non-believers, as well as helping Muslim youth who are struggling with different issues in their lives. This is very important. So if you have any way of helping us, but I want to say, I thank God for the Muslim Food Bank and for the work you guys are doing. And I encourage anyone who's listening to double their giving to you guys. What you're doing in Toronto is a great witness for Islam. We need people doing what you're doing, working in civil rights, human rights, providing help to those who are not able to help themselves. The economies around the world are broken right now because of COVID-19. People are immobile. Muslim ministries are hurting. So please provide support to Muslim Food Bank. And if you have any way of helping, Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation as we move around the world. Asa and I have been to over 50 countries in the last 3 years.
50 countries in 3 years. So I'm sure you have a testimony or two to share with us tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. We have a lot of people coming to Islam. And what we're doing is we're just telling people what Islam is. You know, when I speak in a Christian church, maybe with 100 people in front of me, I can't say, raise your hand if you want to become a Muslim. That wouldn't be fair to them. They would never invite me back again. But I've got Jesus there. And I say, Jesus, I would like to introduce you to my assistant, Jesus. His name is Jesus Al-Haj Hussein. Jesus, could you come up for a minute? Jesus is standing there and he's got on his shirt, Muslim Voice for Peace. And I can see the people, wait, what's going on? Muslim? His name is Jesus? And we tell him, yeah, Muslims love Jesus so much, the real Jesus, that they name their kids Jesus.
My God, you found a catch. You found a legit catch.
And then we put up on the wall, we projected on the wall, the 6 pillars of faith of Islam. What is the faith of Islam? The 6 pillars of faith. And I asked them, I said, number 1, we believe that there is a God. How many of you believe that? Everybody raises their hands. Number 2, we believe in angels. How many of you believe in angels? Everybody raises their hands. I said, we believe in prophets, all the prophets from throughout that are mentioned in the Old Testament of the Bible, New Testament. How many of you believe these in prophets? And they all raise their hands. And I say, how many of you believe in the holy books? The Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, everybody raises their hands. And I said, you know, Muslims believe in the Old and New Testament too, of the Bible. They can't believe it. I said, Muslims believe in Jesus and Maryam, Mary, the Virgin Mary, the virgin birth. And I can see, wow, this is really incredible. They never heard this before. And then, you know, we say, how many of you believe that one day you're going to stand in front of God? It's called the Great Judgment Day. It's in the Old Testament, New Testament. It's also in the Quran. That one day you're going to stand in front of God and he's going to judge you for everything you've done on this earth, good and bad. Everybody raises their hand. I say, how many of you believe that if God says something's going to happen, it's going to happen? It's called predestination or fate. God planned it. Everybody raises their hand. I said, that's Islam. That is Islam. I said, yes, we've got differences. There are different kinds of, how many different kinds of Jews are there? There are many different branches of Judaism. And how many different kinds of Christians are there? They're Orthodox, they're Catholic, they're Protestant. How many kinds of Protestant are there? Thousands. They've broken up so many times that many churches are just independent. They're on their own. I said, there are different kinds of Muslims too. They're Sunni, they're Shia, there are different branches of Sunni. But Muslims believe these 6 pillars of faith. Now, we have some differences and we get into, I let them ask questions and they want to know, but don't Muslims believe in that God is only one and they don't believe in Trinity? And I'll say, yes, that's true. And then I'll explain why. They'll say, don't Muslims believe also that Muhammad is a prophet? And I say, oh, yes. And I'll tell them what I found out about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, since I've been here. Usually when I talk about the Prophet, peace be upon him, my eyes are filled with tears. You know, and I talk about him as a peace activist, anti-war, environmentalists, animal rights activists,
So,
human rights.
So Sam, we're coming to a close. What is your current project or your future project would be, given the climate we're living in, COVID-19, the hype of racism, Black Lives Matter has been on the streets in America. Now they've gone around the world. And we, you know, there are so many crossroads now. The Muslim world is between. I mean, the fact that you yourself have been a voice against racism. What does that mean for the future for you and your team?
It means that we need to raise a lot of money so that we can pay people's salaries in these 50 countries that we've touched. We want to train young people to be activists in these different fields. I had a group of Muslim youth with me. We went to Hiroshima 3 years ago. We went there because I had already been there to the Peace Park. We went to Ground Zero where the atomic bomb was dropped. That was a small atomic bomb. It killed only 130,000 people, one bomb. It destroyed everything, all buildings, churches destroyed. It destroyed everything in the town. It's illegal in Islam to destroy church or any building of worship, Buddhist or Hindu. It's not allowed. It's illegal in Islam to destroy crops and animals during a time of war. It's illegal to kill innocent civilians in a time of war. And we bowed and prayed at Ground Zero that God would raise up a group of Muslim youth to be anti-nuclear weapons activists, because these weapons are illegal according to Islam. I pray that people will begin to understand what Islam is all about. How the Prophet and the Sahaba, his disciples, how they loved animals, how they cared for camels and cats. We need all of this. It's great to have people. Muslims have done great jobs in medicine, and today we've lost so many of our doctors due to COVID-19 because they're on the front line working and fighting against that pandemic. But we also need.
Your work is quite progressive. Do you have United Nations status?
Not yet, but if we can make it to Washington, D.C., establish an office there, we certainly hope to have staff eventually registered and working with the United Nations. And the G20 is coming to Riyadh soon, and we hope to have some influence there to be able to to reach leaders as they're coming to Saudi Arabia for the G20 meetings.
And finally, you came to Canada. Did you meet the Prime Minister? What was your impression of Canada?
I haven't met Trudeau yet. It would be a great, great honor to meet him because he's a very kind man and he's a human rights activist, and his heart is in line with Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation. He's a reconciler. He looks for injustice and he seeks to right wrongs. So I have great respect for Trudeau. I hope that someday I'll be able to meet him, maybe on my next trip to Canada. See if you can set that up for me.
Good.
We'll go together.
Yes.
But I love Canada. I've been there 4 times already, to mosque in Mississauga, in Oakville, and in Toronto. And but my heart is burdened for this brother who was murdered there at your mosque.
Yeah,
on
I am.
Saturday night.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have had a smooth and fruitful conversation today, listening to the story, the life, and the achievements. And of course, this guy, you know, is incredible. In 1969, I wasn't even in this world when he is smuggling Bibles into communist countries and getting locked up. Those kind of heroes, you only hear about it these days on when you're looking at the biopic movie on Netflix, and you think, is this for real? But your story is incredible. Called to Saudi Arabia by a doctor to do a commentary on the Quran to see if it's aligned to Jews and Christians' values, or you can even say language. And there it is, became an opening for you to accept the faith. Samuel, can you tell me about your last name? I have a trouble pronouncing it, but I think it's Irish.
It's English.
It's English.
It's Shropshire. Shropshire.
Shropshire.
Yeah, we work in Shropshire County, England. Muslim Voice for Peace is there.
Oh.
There's a Daya working there, Abdurrahim Green.
Yeah.
We were in Shropshire just maybe 9 months ago with Abdurrahim. I've been there several times as a Muslim. A lot of the churches have closed in England. They're padlocked. You see a lock on the door, or you see a church that's obviously a church building, but it's now a pub where people are drinking alcohol inside, or it's been turned into a dance hall or a discotheque or a small mini market or an apartment building. Churches everywhere have closed. But in Shropshire, 5 churches are now mosques.
Wow.
There's 6 mosques in Shropshire. 5 of them are in former churches. And Islam is growing in England. Islam is growing because Islam is doing what you're doing in Toronto. They have food banks. They're out helping the poor. They're working with drug addicts. They're running drug rehabilitation programs. They're involved in human rights, civil rights. And because of this, people, wow, that's Islam? Then people want it.
Beautiful.
So probably within another 10 to 20 years, Islam will be the largest faith in England.
وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And you have been the epitome and the summarization of Rahmatul Alameen, mercy to humanity throughout your life, and even in your continuous journey after the faith throughout the world, especially my favorite, that the story of Cuba. And so do you plan to travel to Guyana, where I'm from, and to the rest of South America?
I would like very much to go to Guyana. As a matter of fact, we have invitation. ASA has arranged for us to go to several other Caribbean islands, and we would end up in Guyana after going to, what is the country just north of Venezuela? You can see Venezuela from Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
We go to Trinidad and Tobago and then to Guyana. So last year, after Cuba, we went to Colombia. So we have a great burden for South America, just to meet Muslim leaders in that country, to learn what's going on. But Guyana is of special importance to us, and we hope to be there as soon as possible.
Lovely. We just got our new president, and first time in history a Muslim president. But of course, I was fortunate to travel around the world as well, about 55 countries, sharing the faith. And I must say that, majority of the times there is hospitality and willingness and eagerness to learn, rather than, as you said about Saudi Arabia and your perception initially, that, that negative perception. The same can be said for Christians and Jews and Hindus and Western and non-Western countries in the world.
There is a minority in every religion.
Yeah.
Of 1 to 3% that make a lot of negative noise. They're killing, they're terrorist, Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, Muslim. There is 1 to 3% of crazy people. They don't represent those faiths. They're wild and crazy. You see them in every faith. But let me tell to the people of the world, Islam is a religion of peace. Prophet Muhammad was a peacemaker. You know, when he was being chased out of Mecca by his enemies, the Quraysh, he was being chased out of Mecca. He's climbing the mountain to the village of Taif on the top. And when he arrives there, worn, sweating, is in very bad condition. The fathers and their sons came out of their houses and they started throwing rocks at him. The prophet never, and they were cursing him. The prophet never one time picked up a rock and threw it back. And he never cursed anyone who cursed him. He showed only love and respect. When the angel of God came down to the prophet in Taif and said, "Oh prophet, just give me the word. I'll call down the mountains on these people. I'll kill them all." And the prophet screamed, "No, don't do it. Someone might become a Muslim." That was our prophet.
Thank you very much. I must leave now. Shalom, Shanti, and Salam Alaikum, and thank you very much, Samuel Shropshire. Incredible story. I'm honored to be with you here tonight and to share your story. Thank you, everyone who joined us on Zoom and YouTube and on Facebook. We will hopefully be sharing it on the different groups as well. And again, support Muslim Voice for Peace and Reconciliation, mvpr.org. How incredible that would be, you know, representing the faith in Capitol Hill, United Nations, and continuing the work of anti-war activism, environmentalism, anti-racism, and just giving back to humanity. Thank you again and have a good night. And salam alaikum to you beautiful people in Saudi Arabia.
And Habeeb, please give my love and greetings to everyone there at your mosque and to people working with Muslim Food Bank. We're very grateful and I hope to see you again soon. And you have to come and travel with Jesus and me.
When we go to Guyana together.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wa alaikum salam.